Join us on a journey where we unravel the latest trends, tackle burning questions, and explore innovative strategies that are shaping the future of compensation, all with a cup of coffee in hand.
Okay, welcome everybody to Comp and Coffee. I'm Ruth Thomas, your Comp and Coffee podcast custodian. It is summer season, and I know hopefully many of you are enjoying downtime with family and friends and some sunshine, and hopefully also some time to read. So we thought it would be a good time of year to do an episode discussing some of our favourite books. So that's what we're going to do today. So whether you're lounging by the pool, hiking in the mountains, or just relaxing at home, we've got some great book recommendations for you to keep you company. And to help me with this discussion today, I have Jen Ferris, Principal Solutions Consultant at Payscale. I'll let Jen introduce herself in a moment. Welcome, Jen. And Liz Sheffield, my partner in crime on the podcast, who is Manager of Content Marketing and also helps to produce the podcast. So welcome, Liz. Welcome, Liz. Okay, so without further ado, Jen, as you haven't been on the podcast before, do you want to introduce yourself, tell folks about what you do at Payscale, and then maybe how your summer's shaping up so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ruth. I have been at Payscale for over 13 years now. I've done lots of different things in the business, from implementations to comp consulting and managing our professional services team. But I now get to work with our revenue-focused teams and our customer success teams as well with our clients across all platforms. In a prior life, I was an HR and compensation practitioner. So that's the lens through which I see the world. Comp is, I won't say my deepest passion, but it is a big passion of mine. And I also teach courses for World at Work. So living and breathing comp every day. In terms of the summer, it is shaping up well so far. We are in the pinnacle of summer in the Seattle area. This is the time of year that I remember why I live here. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And we're enjoying every ounce of sunlight that we receive.
And no rain. Is it raining in Seattle?
Well, there's been a touch, but we've needed it. So it's okay.
Well, Liz, you're also based in Seattle. Just remind folks about what your job is and how you're enjoying the summer in Seattle.
I will jump on the summer sunny Seattle bandwagon with Jen. I'm loving the Seattle weather. This is the time of year that we don't really leave because it's so nice. And I am the manager of content marketing. So if folks are reading ebooks or quick guides or listening to the podcast, my team and I help get those out the door to help our clients, customers, prospects, and anybody in the comp community. And side note, I was an English major, so I was thrilled by the idea of this podcast. Thank you for letting me barge my way in.
Well, I know we talk about books quite a lot, Liz, anyway, in our sort of day-to-day interaction. So I was an English major too. So that's why I'm passionate about books. And still on my to-do list to write a book. So we'll see. Okay, so we've got a few books lined up to talk about. I think, Jen, we're going to start with one of yours first. I think you've got a couple that you're going to talk us through. For the listeners, we're going to link all the books in the episode notes that we talk about. So don't worry if you didn't get the whole title or the whole name, you'll be able to find that there. But we're just going to share a few books that we found. Tell us what we found most intriguing about them and see what you think. So, Jen, the first recommendation you had was The Myth of the Nice Girl, Achieving a Career You Love Without Becoming a Person You Hate. And that's by Fran Hauser. So I was intrigued by the title and why you choose it, especially because I always think of you as a nice girl or a smiley girl. But that word's very emotive, I know, in the workplace. Well, in life as well, I find nice a very emotive word. So tell us why you chose that book and how you found it.
Yeah, that title, Ruth, caught my eye because in the past I have gotten feedback when I was younger in my career about being too nice and being too smiley, frankly, and using too many exclamation points and things like that. And so the title caught my eye, and as I dug into the book, Hauser really talks about as women, we're taught that we must choose between being nice and being strong leaders. And she challenges that idea. She talks about how those two things truly aren't mutually exclusive, and that you can, and you really should use your niceness as a strength, right? Bringing your authentic self to work while maintaining your boundaries and your assertiveness, and that those things can be done in conjunction with each other.
But you said that of the two books that you suggested we talk about today, that this one potentially wasn't your favorite book. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, it wasn't. I wanted it to be. I really wanted it to be my favorite book, but it wasn't. I felt like for my own personal growth, it fell a little short. As I'm reading books, I love reading. I like to devour them. I can get through a couple books a week if they're really good. And in doing that, my goal is always to uncover new strategies or uncover new ways of thinking, or to view the world through a different lens, right? And so the way that Hauser presents the book and the different strategies she brings to the table, they weren't necessarily fresh perspectives to me. They were things that I had discovered on my own or via mentorships throughout my career. So the strategies and guidance felt more second nature to me, which is why it wasn't, my favorite book.
So would you recommend it to others to read?
I would. I really think it could be a great book for women who are maybe younger in their careers, or still navigating how to balance being direct and decisive while continuing to be authentic and kind and empathetic at work. One thing that I did really love in the book, and I've used this stat that she brings up, she talks about overcoming imposter syndrome. And that's something that I personally have struggled with in my career, and I continue to struggle with it at times. And she brings up this stat that is, men are more likely to apply for a job if they meet about 60%, barely above half of the qualifications listed in the job posting, while women tend to apply only if they meet nearly 100% of the criteria. And I know that I've heard this stat before, and we hear all the time about gender differences in confidence and in risk-taking in the workplace, and how that has such a profound effect on so many things. And Hauser uses that to highlight the challenges that women face when it comes to self-promotion and career advancement. And that really hit home for me. So it wasn't a slam dunk in terms of the entire book, but there were definitely pieces that really resonated.
Yeah, I've read a couple of books that cover a similar theme as well. I think it's always good, as you say, particularly for maybe women starting out their career, just to be aware of the fact, there's men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and how that plays out in the workplace. We are often very different in terms of how we show up and the competencies that we display. And I think becoming comfortable, it's almost the opposite of the old lean in mentality, where women had to be like men kind of thing. It's like we should be able to be like women and celebrate the competencies that we have, that we naturally bring to the table, and and also have very meaningful place in the workplace. So, but it sounds interesting. So, you ever been accused of being too nice, Liz?
Yes. I can't believe you would ask. Yes. No, I was actually, and yeah, a lot of what you were saying, Jen, about the imposter syndrome and that stat. I regularly try to remind myself of, you know, what I've always felt like, okay, I have to be 110% before I try something, or say that I can do something. And that stat just even, it's not related to work. It's just to remember that we can jump in with not having everything lined up. So.
Okay, Jen. So you also offered another book, Leading Without Authority by Keith Ferrazzi. And in your own words, you say you're obsessed with it. So tell us more about that.
I love this book. I need us all to read this book. This needs to be a company book that we all read, because it is incredible. I just could not get enough of this book. So essentially what this book is about is influencing and motivating others, regardless of your formal position in an organization, And the way that he proposes doing that is by building relationships and collaborating across organizational boundaries. So he talks about creating value for others to gain their support and engage in ultimately what he calls co-elevation.
So that sounds interesting. What does co-elevation mean?
I really did perk your ears a little bit to hear that. You have to read the book.
No, come on, tell us.
So co-elevation, in short, is helping others succeed while at the same time achieving your own goals. So it's essentially partnering with somebody to co-elevate, forming a relationship where various individuals, throughout the organization. So Liz, you and I could co-elevate in first, I'm identifying what it is that I can help you with, right? I'm creating value for you first. And I'm being straightforward and upfront with you about what I'm looking to gain out of the relationship as well. So by addressing your needs and goals and offering my needs and goals, and then demonstrating how we can mutually benefit from a co-elevation relationship, from collaborating together, that's where the magic happens. And doing this cross-organizationally, right, cross-departmentally, can be incredibly powerful when people who are not in leadership positions traditionally feel empowered to do this, because those are the people who also can get work done, right? That's work happens not just here, but everywhere. It should be happening at all layers of an organization.
Well, that sounds interesting, particularly if you think about the environment we have here at Payscale, where we're all working remotely. And I know we've been working very hard for the last 12 months or so in terms of breaking down silos between functions in order to kind of like get stuff done. So that sounds like a great approach. But how is Ferrazzi's approach to leadership different from, say, traditional, more hierarchical models?
Yeah, so it really talks about influence versus positional power. And he does, he's not just focused on individual contributor level folks. In the book, he gives example of coaching that he has done for leadership teams and for different directors of very well-known organizations or VPs of well-known organizations. So he's not just honing in on the IC level. He's just saying that your title doesn't matter, right? It's the influence that you have over people that is where leadership is driven from. Horizontal relationships rather than, again, that vertical chain of command. He focuses on proactive problem solving at all levels of the organization, and then ultimately promoting a more agile and adaptable organizational culture. To your point, Ruth, especially with being remote, being agile and being able to adapt to things more quickly, but also having relationships when you're not in a building with multiple floors where you can say, I need to go down to floor 2 and talk to Liz. You still need to have these relationships, and they're incredibly important to drive, the ultimate organizational goals.
Mm-hmm. So how would that show up practically in terms of like building and maintaining networks within an organization? How would that happen underneath the Ferrazzi model?
Yeah, he gives a lot of good tips, regularly reaching out to colleagues across different departments, setting up check-ins. I think that one of the things he mentions is a gentleman that he worked with who has a list. And it's not an inauthentic thing to make it a practice to have a list of people that you are constantly reaching out to on a regular cadence, right? That can feel inauthentic to be checking a box.
Mm-hmm.
And it is if you're just checking a box. But if you're having a list to hold yourself accountable to maintaining relationships, sometimes that's what you have to do in the busy world that we live in, right? Offering help and support without expecting immediate return. So he talks about building value for others before you even expect them to help you. And that sort of ties back as well to the Nice Girl book, right? It's bringing your authentic, helpful, kind, caring, genuine self to work and leaning into that, using that as a strength.
Great.
Yeah, go ahead, Ruth.
Yeah, go. That all sounds great. Sorry, were you going to add some more there?
No, I could talk for days about this. Go on.
I was going to say, it sounds a lot like I see you showing up in the workplace already, though, because I know you're very good at networking across the organization, and that offering help and support is something that I've seen you do a lot of the time. But yeah, some interesting thoughts there. What was your big takeaway? Like, what did it make you go, right, I'm going to go and do that in the workplace now? So
I think it's doing it in an intentional way. So I think that I am naturally good at making relationships and being a helper and reaching out and trying to do what I can for many people. But that often, and I know this about myself, leads to overextension, right? It can't be everything for everyone all the time. And so for me, it's about prioritization and figuring out where it makes sense and how to intentionally do it in a way that makes the most impact for our organization, right? Where can I lean in the most to help Payscale make the greatest leaps?
mhm. Sounds great. I'm intrigued. I'm definitely intrigued by the book. What about you, Liz?
I am as well, Ruth. And I love kind of the combination of these two books that you've read, Jen. That's sort of they toss back and forth together. I like what you were saying of the nice girl. That's, yes, we can be that, and then still this other approach to how to be showing up authentically and help.
Yeah, there were some really nice tie-ins. There was some unexpected overlap between the two books, definitely.
Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts on those two. Right, Liz, it's your turn now. One of the books that you chose was Daily Practices of Inclusive Leaders, a guide to building a culture of belonging. And it was published by Eddie Pate, are we going to say? Pate?
Yeah,
And
it's Eddie
Jonathan
Pate.
Stutz. So can you tell us what attracted you to this book, first of all?
Yeah, in a prior life, I facilitated a diversity workshop once a quarter. So it's a professional and personal interest of mine. And I also worked with Eddie Pate while I was at Starbucks. And my husband, back in the day, took a course at the University of Washington from Dr. Pate. So he actually was the first that was like, oh my goodness, Liz, Eddie books. So we were excited to get this on our bookshelves, and it just really, it delivered in terms of those daily practices and how to show up as a leader supporting DE&I.
So can you give us a synopsis of the main themes?
Yeah, so it's divided into two sections, and the first is really around sort of foundations of inclusive leadership. There's they approach it in terms of daily wisdom, daily courage, and daily heart. Yeah, we're talking about heart again. This is like showing up with an open heart. And then they have competencies, 7 that they've outlined related to being an inclusive leader. And then the second part is a list of kind of, these are the daily practices. So here's how the why, and then there's the how. So that's related to everything about HR, in terms of attracting, retaining, engaging, and even when talent leaves, how is DE&I focused in that arena?
And were there any key recommendations that resonated with you?
Well, yes. So I'm one for a story. I have to share this story because it really stuck with me. Cultural competence, like we think that's just kind of basic, maybe in terms of DE&I, but it's so easy to miss. And they were both Microsoft for a time, and they share an experience where Microsoft was releasing a competitive iPod product back when, and they named it Zune. It's kind of catchy name. Lo and behold, Zune is a word in Hebrew that is like a swear word. So I think like they did a nice job of weaving in their experience to illustrate this. This really does matter. It's just a nice to have. This is something For people that only are looking at business impact, this has business impact. It's not only the right thing to do. Key recommendations. See, I'm like Jen, I'm like you on this other book. I could talk about this book for days. I'm going to try and keep it brief. Two things that I loved and will take away is they just continuously referred to daily inclusive practices related to DE&I being pebbles that leaders are dropping into the organizational culture and the ripple effects. And I just thought that was really powerful. I think some of us, it would be great to have sweeping change, but that isn't always possible. But just every little thing that you're doing is having a ripple effect. Loved that. And then they talk about the danger of a single story, and that really resonated with me as well. So we might be thinking, oh, I've worked with someone from X culture, or I've worked with somebody with this type of diversity in their life. And then everybody that we meet that shares that similar aspect is going to be the same way. And that's just not the case. And so, I thought it was a catchy phrase, honestly, the danger of a single story, that you can't just take one story and apply it to everybody.
Sounds interesting. Yeah, I've definitely had some that Zune example in my role as being like HR leader especially when I was based out in Asia Pacific and I was working for US firms. And, one of the things I would struggle with every time was when they would try and insist that it was summer and we could all wear a summer wardrobe to work. And I had to try and explain that clearly summer wasn't at the same time in all parts of the world. And, it was like basic things like that were quite a challenge sometimes to get people to understand like cultural references and the cultural diversity. So now you were mentioning the acronym because there's a few acronyms around for DE&I. So we talk about DE&I. Sometimes we talk about DEI and B. So diversity, equity, inclusion, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. They have the acronym I, D, and E. Tell me about that.
Yes. So they inclusion, diversity, and equity. And they put inclusion at the front because they feel like that's like everything needs to start from inclusion. That's the foundation that you're building everything else, which actually made a lot of sense to me. I've for decades have said DE&I, so it's a little bit of a tongue twister for me, but I appreciated that they kept all those three elements in there, but just shifted the order of them. So yeah, again, right, being open to a new idea. I felt that was
well, I think from the perspective that they're looking at it, they are very
Right.
much focusing on the inclusion element of DE&I, aren't they? Diversity is obviously, getting different types of people in the door. Equity for me is all about the processes that you're putting in place to make sure people have opportunity that they need. Inclusion is making people feel like they belong. And I think, the feeling is for many years we've had diversity tactics, but we've missed out on the inclusion element. And that's, becoming more and more important today. But quite a hot topic because there's been a bit of a debate recently with recent activity from the Society of Human Resource Management, who decided to remove the E from their acronym. And that caused quite a flutter in the HR communities across LinkedIn. Any thoughts on that, Liz? You were following it. Any sort of thoughts about how that played out?
Well, I took encouragement from it actually, because there was such a reaction, right, and a robust dialogue, I'll say, that came out of it. So part of why I was also excited about this book is that, I think people see headlines as DE&I, going away. Is it forgotten? So both that reaction to the SHRM removal of E from their acronym, as well as Eddie and Jonathan are writing books like this. So this is still a conversation, thank goodness, that we're having, and it's not going away. So even though it was a bit of a kerfuffle there in the social media around the SHRM decision, I think it's positive, right? It's dialogue. So Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, and if you missed that, we kind of put out a statement here at Payscale saying we still very much believe in equity. I think we did a LinkedIn post on it and explaining, why we believe the E should stand on its own in the acronym, because we feel we play a very important part in our role here at Payscale in helping to ensure equity, not equity in the workplace, equity of opportunity, and also pay equity. So if you missed that, go and find Payscale on LinkedIn, and you can see where we ended up as an organisation in terms of our view on that. So, well, pay equity we've mentioned, so that's probably a good segue to the book that I'm going to recommend. This is a book I read a couple of years ago, 18 months ago, but I just reread it when I was on holiday recently in Italy. And it's a book called Fair Pay by David Buckmaster. So it initially came out in 2021. Probably not a surprise for the listeners that I chose a book on fair pay. Obviously, pay equity, fair pay is my hot topic and favourite topic. And we've had quite a few thought leaders bring out books on the whole subject matter of pay equity, but this one I really loved. And if you are looking for the one book to read on fair pay, I would definitely recommend this book. So David Buckmaster, interesting you mentioned Starbucks, Liz. David was compensation expert. He worked at Starbucks. He's also worked at Nike, KFC, and Pizza Hut. I now know David because I reached out to him after I read his book and told him I loved it. And we've now engaged in a thought leadership, kind of backward and forward. He spoke at Payscale conference in 22. And if you've attended any of the World at Work webinars that are held on Equal Pay Day, so that's a day when Payscale comes together with, in theory, our competitors in the field of pay equity, but we all stand unified on Equal Pay Day to talk about how pay equity is progressing, both in the workplace and in society. And David is the MC on that. So he's MC'd that webinar for the last 2 years. So if you want to see David in action, you can probably go to World at Work and find that webinar. But yeah, he's just a great all-round guy. This book really takes on the crisis of income equality. I think at the time when it came out, 21, we were just post-COVID. There'd been obviously a lot of income disruption happening at that time, a lot of noise, particularly in Seattle, Starbucks area around minimum wages. And so this is kind of where he leans into in this book, talking about some of the problems that we have with our current compensation models, as well as demystifying pay practices. So I think as a book, if you read the front cover, it's got quite ambitious goals. It says how to get a raise, how to close the wage gap, and how to build a stronger business. So it's quite a lot he's trying to do in one book. But I think it does reflect how pay equity is an individual personal issue, a societal issue, and a business issue. And he manages to cover all of that off. And it's not really just a book for HR or comp or people like us who are interested in pay. I would think if you're a business leader and you want to really get a handle on why fair pay and pay equity is important, I would recommend that you read this book. And then even as an individual, if you're wanting to understand how pay is set within your organization and how to negotiate, your own pay, then reading this book is a must. Because he leans into covering lots of different things, including, how companies build their pay structures. He does a whole explanation of the technicalities of how we measure pay equity from the controlled and uncontrolled pay gaps, and covers issues around minimum wage increases that I mentioned, even pay for gig workers, because he starts to think about the future of work and how fair pay might look. So I just love the whole tone of his book. It was written with a very humorous, personal narrative style, and gave lots of great real life examples so you could easily relate. So you definitely don't need to be a comp person. I think why it resonated with me the most is there's one quote I wanted to read out, and it's, traditionally, people in jobs like mine have understood their role to be trackers of the market trends. We pay less attention on how we can influence the trajectory of the marketplace itself. And that really resonated with me because if you've heard me speak before, you'll know that I am very passionate about the responsibility we have at Payscale in terms of what we do. So we collect thousands, millions of points of market data. But we have a responsibility in, sharing that market data and making sure people understand how to achieve fair pay through using our data. I also think that we have a responsibility in terms of understanding that the market data itself is biased because it reflects pay within organizations. And what we're trying to do here at Payscale is help organizations achieve fair pay. So ultimately, the market data that we're processing will be fairer pay as well. So I think that was the real moment where I was like, yeah, we're talking the same language here, David. So that was why I was passionate about this book. But I know a lot of people struggle with the term fair pay. A lot of people don't like the term fair pay. And he particularly suggests thinking of it as an operating mindset rather than kind of some utopian state that we're all trying to achieve. So it was kind of very inspirational. It's a very funny read as well. So I definitely recommend, if you're wanting to read that one book about fair pay, this is the one that I would recommend. So have I tempted you, Jen or Liz, to read that book?
Yes.
Yes.
Your work is done.
Okay.
I love it. Like he took on a lot, as you said, from looking at those three perspectives and then doing so in an engaging way, right? Like a lot of people maybe say, oh, compensation, what a boring topic. I mean, that's not what we say, but yeah, exciting that he's managed to convey the excitement.
Yeah, I think recognizing that pay is a very personal issue for many people, and particularly, for certain segments of employee populations, pay is, really can drive their lifestyle and not just like lifestyle in the cutesy way of lifestyle. It can, whether they're managing to feed their children and, but, kind of take care of their families and things like that. So yeah, it was really heartfelt read. Back to heart again. There's a lot of heartfelt stuff going on here today. Great. Well, thank you all for joining me, Liz and Jen. Have you got anything else on your reading list next? Doesn't need to be workbook or fiction book. And what's on your next list, Jen?
Yeah. We have, so to Liz's point earlier, in Seattle, in the between the months of July and September, October, you're not allowed to leave. Like those are just the rules of engagement for living here. And so we do, not a big fan of road trips. I'm not really a car driving road trip gal, but it's what we do in the summer. And so with the kids, I've been trying to, I have a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, and I like to learn when I read, right? Like sometimes I do like to turn off my brain and just dive into a romance or a mystery or a thriller or something. But I have found historical fiction books for children. For any parents out there, you guys, the I Survived series. We listened on the way home last night from Eastern Washington. I survived the Battle of Gettysburg through the eyes of a slave. It was amazing. It was a great read. And so I have a lot of these audiobooks downloaded. I survived audiobooks. And for myself, becoming Madam Secretary is on my list. Another sort of historical fiction about Frances Perkins, a woman who served in President Franklin Roosevelt's cabinet during the Great Depression. So that one looks fantastic, and I will report back.
Great. And what about you, Liz? What's on your bedside table?
I just read a book called The 7-Year Slip, which was a little bit of time travel. Somebody's going back and forth between 7 years prior and current day. Very good. And I'm also reading a book by Claire Pooley. I think she's over on your side of the pond, Ruth. And I can't remember. It's a good, it's about commuting. So people, it's really good. These are, after having read a lot as an English major, I am one who I totally read for fun these days. And these books are really,
Well, thank you both for coming on the podcast today and sharing your reading list. Hopefully we've inspired you listeners. Maybe you'll go and grab a copy of one of those books. We're not getting commission on any of those books. It's not an advert. But we will make sure we list all the books we talked about today in the episode brief. If you enjoyed listening to us, let us know. You can email us at coffee@payscale.com. And if you liked the format of the episode and you think this is something you'd like to do again, or even if you want to come on and join us on the podcast and talk about some books that you've read, then do let us know. Thank you very much for joining us, and goodbye.